The Greyhound bus rumbled into the Los Angeles station, spewing diesel fumes and weary travelers. Among them was Detective Henry, a man hardened by years on the force, his mind burdened with the weight of unsolved cases. Los Angeles, they called it, the City of Angels. To Henry it felt more like a concrete jungle filled with the lost and the forgotten. He had come seeking answers, a breakthrough, anything to solve the mysterious disappearances plaguing the city. Days bled into nights. Henry walked the sun-baked streets, each dead end chipping away at his resolve. One sweltering afternoon, drawn by the promise of shade, Henry found himself in a rundown park. A street preacher with fiery eyes and a booming voice held court before a smattering of homeless souls. His words, however, were far from comforting. He spoke of unseen forces, of puppet masters pulling the strings of humanity. Henry, hardened by years of investigating, scoffed at the man's ravings. He had learned the hard way that the only enemy was indifference. As fate would have it, a gruff-looking man named Jack overheard Henry's cynical remarks. Jack, a veteran himself, saw something in Henry's eyes, a spark of defiance that mirrored his own. He offered Henry a lead, a clue that pointed to a junkyard on the outskirts of the city. It wasn't much, but it was a start, and it came with a promise of more information, a ramshackle hut in a shantytown that had sprung up in the shadow of a colossal abandoned church. Intrigued by the mystery surrounding the church, Henry accepted Jack's lead. The church, with its stained glass windows boarded up and its once grand doors sealed shut, seemed to emanate an unsettling silence, as if it held its breath, guarding secrets best left undisturbed. Little did Henry know he had stumbled upon the very heart of the conspiracy whispered about by the street preacher. The preacher's words echoed in the detective's mind as he delved deeper into his investigation. "They are among us," the preacher had warned, his voice trembling with conviction. "They wear our faces, speak our language, but their hearts are cold, their intentions sinister." The detective had dismissed it as the ramblings of a madman, but now, surrounded by the eerie stillness of the abandoned church, a seed of doubt began to take root. George, a man of few words but keen observation, noticed the detective's preoccupation. One evening, over a shared meal of beans and stale bread, he decided to break the silence. "Don't let that preacher get to you," he said, his voice gruff but laced with concern. "Those conspiracy types, they're all bark and no bite." The detective hesitated, unsure whether to confide in George. He had only known the man for a short time, yet there was a sense of kinship, a shared understanding that transcended words. "It's just—" the detective began, then stopped himself. How could he possibly explain the growing unease that gnawed at him, the strange occurrences he had witnessed in the shadows of the church, fleeting glimpses of figures moving with unnatural speed, hushed conversations in languages he couldn't decipher? It sounded like madness, even to his own ears. But deep down, a primal instinct whispered that something was terribly wrong. Shaking his head, the detective forced a tired smile. "It's nothing, George. Just the city getting to me, I guess." George studied him for a moment, his eyes narrowed in thought. He seemed about to say something, then thought better of it. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn deck of cards. "Game of cribbage?" he offered, shuffling the cards with practiced ease. The detective gratefully accepted, pushing aside his unease for the camaraderie of their nightly ritual. Work at the junkyard was hard and unforgiving, but it provided a welcome distraction from the unsettling thoughts that plagued Henry's mind. James proved to be a reliable friend and a valuable ally in navigating the harsh realities of their new life. Days turned into weeks, and the routine, though grueling, brought a semblance of normalcy to Henry's existence. Yet, the abandoned church continued to exert a strange pull on him. Its looming presence was a constant reminder of the mysteries that lay hidden beneath the surface of their everyday lives. One evening, as Henry and James were sorting through a pile of scrap metal, they stumbled upon an old radio. It was battered and dusty, its wires exposed, but something about it piqued Henry's curiosity. He spent the better part of the evening tinkering with it, his fingers calloused but nimble. Just as he was about to give up hope, a burst of static erupted from the speaker, followed by a faint voice. It was a pirate radio station broadcasting from somewhere deep within the city. The voice belonged to a young woman, her tone urgent and filled with a quiet desperation. "They are watching us," she whispered, her voice barely a murmur above the static. "They control everything. The media, the government, even our thoughts." Henry's blood ran cold. The words mirrored the street preacher's warnings, confirming his worst fears. He exchanged a look with James, a silent acknowledgement that they were on the cusp of something big, something dangerous. The woman on the radio identified herself only as the Watcher, and she claimed to have uncovered a vast conspiracy that threatened the very fabric of society. She spoke of a hidden enemy, lurking in plain sight, controlling the levers of power from the shadows. Henry and James listened intently, their hearts pounding in their chests, as the Watcher revealed the terrifying truth. The enemy was not of this world. The next day, Henry's friend, a scientist, revealed shocking evidence that the disappearances were linked to an alien conspiracy. Determined to uncover the truth, Henry knew their lives would never be the same again. Henry couldn't shake the words of the Watcher from his mind. That night, sleep eluded him as his thoughts raced, piecing together the fragments of the mystery. The abandoned church, the preacher's warnings, the pirate radio broadcast, it all pointed to something far more sinister than he ever imagined. Gap 3S. The next morning, Henry met with his friend, the scientist, who had been diligently working on decoding the strange signals they had intercepted. The scientist's face was pale, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and disbelief. He handed Henry a stack of documents, his hands trembling. Gap 3S. This changes everything, the scientist stammered. The disappearances, the anomalies, they are all connected to an alien presence. But there's more, Henry. Something that you need to know. Gap 3S. Henry's heart pounded in his chest as he pored over the documents. The evidence was irrefutable. But then he came across something that made his blood run cold. A file, marked with his name. As he read through it, the shocking truth unraveled before his eyes. Gap 3S. Henry was not just an ordinary man, he was an alien planted on Earth to monitor human activities. The realization hit him like a tidal wave, shaking him to his core. His entire existence, his memories, his sense of self, it was all a lie, a carefully constructed facade to blend in with humanity. Gap 3S. He stumbled back, his mind reeling from the revelation. The weight of his true identity bore down on him, suffocating him with its enormity. Every interaction, every decision he had made was now cast in a different light. He was part of the very conspiracy he had been trying to uncover. Gap 3S. Henry's thoughts were a whirlwind of confusion and fear. He had a choice to make. Would he continue his mission, betraying the very people he had grown to care about? Or would he defy his alien brethren and protect humanity from the impending invasion? Gap 3S. The fate of the world hung in the balance, and Henry knew that his decision would shape the future of both species. As he stood at the crossroads of destiny, the weight of his newfound truth pressed heavily upon him. The journey ahead was fraught with danger, but one thing was certain: Henry's life would never be the same again.